What is a movie that is actually scary, preferably one that doesn't rely solely on jump scares? The haunting 1963 black-white version. Not the 1999 remake. No jump scares. No visual scares at all. Really. Just a relentless build-up of tension through sound and camera angles and story. Was going to suggest this. Very scary. I read the book and it's almost like reading poetry. I found myself reading certain paragraphs over several times. As if I was falling under the spell of the house as Alina did. Hill House has stood for 90 years. It might stand for 90 more. Within. Walls continue upright. Bricks meet. Floors are firm. And doors are sensibly shut. Silence lies steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and we who walk here, walk alone. I'm 74. Why? Oh, when I was a kid I saw a movie, Horrors of the Black Museum. It featured a pair of binoculars that had spikes that popped out into the eyes of the person who used them. I have had a problem with binoculars ever since. Imagine my trepidation when I was a lookout in the Navy. There's a scene in The Phantom where some guy has a microscope with 2 eye holes with spikes that came out if you tried to adjust the focus, and he calls some other dude to take a look on the microscope. It was very scary to me as a kid. Misery is brilliant. The way Kathy Bates plays Annie is so brilliant that she can make you terrified with simply a look. I said it before, and I'll say it again. This movie made me terrified of her, and I hated seeing her face in other movies. Now that I'm older I can really appreciate her as an actress. I'm not sure how it holds up today, but as a kid The Others scared me quite a bit. I watched The Others and Signs the same day as a kid and I didn't sleep for a week. The Thing by John Carpenter is an incredible horror film. One of my favorite movies of all time. And the effects still hold up partially because Carpenter cut scenes where he felt the effects were too noticeable. Edit. Fun fact. During test screening some audience members complained the effects made them feel ill. Carpenter made 0 changes. Alien and its sequel grips you with anxiety and never lets go. Not even after the movie is over. I'd go with Alien and Alien 3 for horror myself. Aliens feels more like an action movie to me for most of it. Rosemary's Baby. The genius is in the storytelling. Not once are our fears truly confirmed. Instead the horror is implied. And the tension is built throughout a series of incidents. Halfway through the film we can't tell if our protagonist is paranoid and unreliable, or if something funny is really going on. We never meet the gal. And only in the end does the movie laugh in our face. I think it's a great horror film that lets your expectations run wild in the worst way. Bits and pieces are provided to you. And only does your imagination provide a horror larger than the sum of its parts. I highly recommend. We never meet the gal. I thought there was a rape scene where she's like half awake and the devil is laying claim to her uterus and she's like this is real. And the old satanists are behind the devil chanting. Did I imagine that? My advice is to take any highly recommended movie and don't read any descriptions or otherwise learn anything about it. Horror movies are so much better this way. And on that note, The Descent. Some women get trapped spelunking. This is a great rule for horror movies, not a great rule for musicals. I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't fully realize Sweeney Todd was a musical until 20 minutes in. I thought The Greatest Showman was a normal movie, was very confused after Hugh Jackman got done singing, but brushed it off. Then he kept singing. My so roped me into a damn musical. I watched Coraline as a 17-year-old, and it creeped me out so much. The funny thing about this movie book is that according to Neil Gaiman children tend to see this as an adventure story, whereas adults put it firmly in the horror genre. Poltergeist, the old one. The suction portal that eats the house gave me nightmares for years. And I still have to turn off a TV if it's displaying static for some reason or another. My all-time favorite scary movie. Sure, The Thing in the Closet looks like a giant muppet. And the tornado looked pretty cartoony, but that acting was stellar. Jo Beth Williams and Craig Nelson nailed it. The Poughkeepsie tapes really got to me. Just sitting at the edge of the seat saying no, 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 and some scenes were just so unnerving. This movie is unbelievably creepy. Can you imagine if it were well made? If certain performances hadn't broken my suspension of disbelief, it would have been a contender for scariest movie I've ever seen. Event Horizon manages to scare me. Liberate to Team X Inferis. Both 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later felt tense as heck and used music to heighten that tension at key moments very well. They each have a few jump scares, but the beginning of 28 Weeks Later goes from a jump scare to a total shit show of panic and chaos as those rabid infected sprint people down. I think these films portray one of the most terrifying depictions of a zombie infected that feels unsettlingly plausible. That whole intro to 28 Weeks Later was so ducking tense in a good way, getting you right into the movie instantly. I wasn't as fond of the fact that the movie turned into basically a jumpy action zombie film, but that helicopter scene was pretty cool. But nothing will ever beat 28 Days Later for me. The overall sense of doom and hopelessness. The music. Hell, even the fact that the editing was kinda junk and felt like a home movie was ducking amazing. Duck running zombies though. For me, Fire in the Sky. The Travis Walton story was scary, as I'm old enough to remember it playing out on the network news. That one scene, you know which one I mean, is deeply horrifying to me. One of the scariest scenes in any movie I've ever seen. No jump scares or gore at all. Just so ducking disturbing. 1408 is my favorite. It's not bloody, just scary. I loved A Quiet Place too. For the same reasons. Ugh, 1408 is such a giant minduck of movie. I love it. But I still can't hear Karen Carpenter's voice without thinking of it. We've only just begun. There's a Netflix movie called The Ritual. It's actually pretty damn good. The lead actor is excellent. He co-stars with John Hamm in the White Christmas episode of Black Mirror as well. My go-to is always The Ring, and not its sequels. The horror is almost entirely atmospheric and creepy. This is the only movie that has ever scared me. Funny Games is legitimately the most disturbing movie I have ever seen. Holy shit, I repressed that movie, the remake. I remember it being a thing that Michael Pitt forbade his mother from seeing it because of what an awful character he plays. Cube. Imagine being trapped inside a massive death machine with puzzles. I also like the Phantasm films. I wouldn't call Cube scary, and I say that as someone that liked all three of those movies. It has its moments though. The best part being when you get that monologue about how the whole structure was an accident and they put people in there because it was just a thing that existed. Kinda sucked when Cube Zero spoiled that ambiguity. I haven't seen The Descent on here. There is one jump scare to start things off, but after that it's a total survival movie with great pacing. Most recently, Hereditary gave me the yikes. I think the director borrowed a lot of techniques from Stanley Kubrick and other greats, but honestly, it paid off. What we got was a solid horror film with some truly unsettling moments and creepy atmosphere. Hereditary. I saw that months ago, and I still leave the light on. Requiem for a Dream is not horror, but it scared the shit out of me. Whenever I hear the theme song I wanna cry. Made the mistake of watching this in middle school because I had a crush on Jared Leto. Oculus. Only movie that's actually scared me as an adult. Gave me the feeling I used to get when I did drugs. That out of control feeling where you're not sure what's real and what's not. It was terrifying for me. This movie is an absolute gem, and so many people sleep on it. The execution is so wonderful. You go in wondering how the heck a mirror can be a terrifying adversary. By the end you realize the mirror had already won the second they took it into the house. The symmetry of the beginning and ending was fantastic as well. I loved this film, and it really unsettled my GF. Annihilation. The one scene which I will not even describe, because you should just experience it, is messed up. The novels on which this movie was based were even weirder but less scary. I liked the movie too though. For different reasons. You're talking about the best scene, right? The Witch. It's about a family shunned from a village for religious beliefs that struggle to live on a farm on the outskirts of the forest haunted by a witch. It's a psychological thriller more than a horror film, I'd say. I don't remember there being one jump scare. but the overall vibe of the movie is extremely creepy and dark, especially as the family begins to turn on each other. There is no real scary parts that make you look away, just creepy ones that make you think, what the duck did I just watch? The cinematography and shots of every scene help to feed into that creepy feeling throughout the whole movie. Definitely recommend. I really like how the dark scenes were dark, as in here's a family eating dinner by candlelight. We literally can't see anything outside the candle's light. Silence of the Lambs. As good as this film is, and it is good, I wouldn't call it a full-on scary movie. It's more of a slow burn psychological thriller if anything. And I can't do proper horror movies, like genuinely scary stuff, like for example most of the Japanese horror films, I can't sit through. One that I haven't seen mentioned in this thread yet is 30 Days of Night. The setting for the movie, remote town in Alaska in the middle of the winter. Getting no sunlight for a month was probably the best in any horror movie I've ever seen. Edit. Even though it is full of jump scares, the original Wreck movie is also great. Same can be said for Grave Encounters. Also, Scooby-Doo Zombie Island Link seriously scared me as a kid. I tried rewatching 30 Days of Night as an adult, and it was so unsettling and depressing. Good lord. And the sounds the vampires make. Jesus. The Shining. Classic horror showing what real human beings can do to each other under the right wrong conditions. Good balance of realistic fear and supernatural terror, and a happy-ish ending that doesn't ruin the horror what you just saw. Let the Right One In. The American remake, I would say, is a solid 7/10, pretty decent remake, and I do enjoy Chloe Grace Moretz. But the original Swedish one is amazing and a piece of art. I truly think it would have won an Oscar if they hadn't ducked up when submitting and couldn't figure out when to submit it, so ended up not submitting it. My list of highly recommended movies that rely on the highest form of horror, dread, rather than jump scares or disgust. 1. The Witch. Beautifully done colonial New England adventure about a Puritan family's trials after they are exiled from civilization and their torture at the hands of a Witch of the Woods. To the Void. Cosmic horror at his best. I don't want to spoil anything here, but don't be surprised if when watching it, you have no idea what's going on. Figuring it out, and partially never knowing, is part of the charm. 3. Green Room. Punk band down on their luck accidentally finds themselves at a neo-Nazi club for a gig. Then they sing an anti-Nazi song, and witness a murder. And it all goes downhill from there. Very realistic. Very dark. For the Terror. Not a movie, but a miniseries that blew me away. 2 ships try to find the Northwest Passage in the mid-1800s, only to be locked in by shifting ice ridges and hunted by some strange beast hidden in the Arctic wastes. Very human, and shows what lengths people will go to in order to survive. Hope you enjoy them. Does anyone remember California, where Brad Pitt plays a deranged redneck killer early Davis traveling across America with a yuppie couple and his ditzy girlfriend played by Juliette Lewis? He was so nasty and disturbing in that movie that I couldn't stand him for a long time. Movies like this scare me because I know damn well people like that exist in real life. I love Silent Hill. It created such a dark and eerie atmosphere with interesting nefarious creatures. The music fits perfectly, the story is interesting, and all around a great horror movie. It's not necessarily scary, but it definitely has some memorable creepy things about it. Never played the video games, but apparently they were good too. Candyman has always been my favorite scary movie. I'm almost 40 years old, and I still refuse to look into the mirror when I get up to pee at night. Tony Todd was absolutely brilliant in the role. Threads. There are no jump scares. It's about a theoretical nuclear attack on Britain. It shows before, during, and after the attack. It takes you a few hours, a day, few days, few weeks, few months, all the way up to 11 years after the attack. It doesn't spare you anything. It's horrifying. I'm not easily scared, but it was the most genuinely petrifying film I've ever seen, because it can actually happen. If you're familiar with The Day After, throw that out the window, because this one is 1,000 times more graphic and grittier. The scariest movies I've seen lately are in no particular order. 1. It Follows. 2. The Babadook. 3. The Conjuring. 4. The Ritual on Netflix right now. 5. Sinister. 6. Last Shift on Ice. Grimy little indie horror set in a haunted police station. 7. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I still haven't found the time to see Hereditary and A Quiet Place, but I've heard both are scary as heck and fantastic. We are truly in the golden era of horror films right now.